In this episode of Something to Say, RGVision CEO Gabriel Puente will be speaking with Robert Lopez, creator of the blog 9 to 5 Guy and video series 3 Shots, 3 Questions. Join the conversation as they chat about the art of storytelling, how Robert gained followers in South Texas, his most interesting interview, and how his blogging ties into his actual 9 to 5 at the McAllen Chamber of Commerce's Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome everybody. So my name is Gabriel Puente, Chief Marketing Officer here at RGVision Media. This is our podcast, Got Something to Say. Today we have with us Mr. Bob Lopez, Interim President at McAllen Chamber, and also the creator and founder, right, of 9 to 5. Yeah. 9 to 5 Guy.
9 to 5 Guy, okay. Yeah. Not to be confused with 956 Guy, yeah. Which Gabe called me for the first year and a half. And then I feel like I finally started getting some traction when he started calling me 9 to 5 Guy. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I've done a good enough job.
No, you have done an awesome job. I mean, I follow you. You got a lot of followers, man. So I really appreciate what you have done with 9 to 5 Guy here in the Rio Grande Valley. How did you, so let's back up. I mean, you've been with the chamber, the McAllen Chamber, for quite some time.
Yeah. I started working there in June of 2012. So 7 years I've been there. And as a director of sales for Visit McAllen. And, just doing convention sales. The 9 to 5 Guy stuff really happened in 2015. There's always that thing where, and right around that time, 2015, McAllen was like labeled as the fattest city in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're trying to market McAllen as a destination for people, that's not a really good look, And, and so, and also not having much of a marketing budget to work with, it's like, okay, what can I do, right? And I don't know how I stumbled across this Men's Health magazine Ultimate Guy contest, right?
You don't know how you stumbled across it? You don't know how you stumbled across Men's Health? Because I really look for it all.
Well, here's the thing. I knew I subscribed to the magazine, but I don't know if I saw it in the magazine at the contest. And anyway, I look online, and I must have seen it on the magazine. And then I go online, and the first 20 people, it showed their picture, where they were from, and whatever, right? And so I was like, at the time I was in pretty good shape. I was like, why don't I enter this? If I can get into the top 20, it's, maybe make a case for showing people that McAllen's not, that's not really who we are. Right. And so, and it was a very scary thing for me to do, because you're really putting yourself out there for criticism, really putting yourself out there like that. And I said, well, my buddy Zara said, nothing bad can come from it.
So did you get a lot of criticism? Did you get a lot of, it was all positive, right?
All positive, man. I put it out there, and, people started, it was like a online voting thing. People start voting, people start sharing it. And then the Monitor picked up the story, and after the newspaper ran the story, it started getting a lot of love, and it was just a lot of positive stuff, man. And, I made it as high as second place in the rankings out of 1,000 people, and didn't make it to the final round, but I was totally fine with that, because it was tough having to always post pictures and comment and, reply to comments. And it was every day it was work. Right. And so when that ended, is kind of how the 9 to 5 Guy stuff was born. And it was like, okay, well, I've maxed out my personal Facebook at like 5,000 is what it caps at. And then I have this audience. It's like, what next, right? And so my buddy Czar mentioned, well, why don't you do like a blog? Why don't you do like a health and fitness blog? And I was like, dude, I'm not qualified to give health and fitness advice, nor is it anything I'm really interested in doing. It's not like interesting for me. I mean, my lifestyle choices, that's just me. I'm not qualified to advise anyone on that. And so, and he's like, well, what do you know about? And again, it goes back to my job at the chamber, where it's like, I know about McAllen, and we didn't really have much of a marketing budget. So people weren't really like, I felt like we had all these great restaurants and these great stories and businesses in the Valley, and in McAllen in particular, and people weren't sharing those stories. And I was like, well, I'll just write about, blogs about places in McAllen. And then when I was coming up with the concept, I was like, well, what do I like to read, right? And I like to read lists because if I'm in a hurry, I can just read what the top 5 are. And, what do I like? What restaurants are good? Best places for live music, whatever. And so I started writing these top this, top that, these listicle type blogs.
Yeah.
And it really took off from there. I wrote 100 blogs in the first 2 years. So every Friday I would write a blog.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started, man, with the blogging.
Well, I will give you credit. You did also inspire me to do 1,000 crunches a day and also stop eating Krispy Kreme donuts every other week when I saw you competed for the men's health competition. It's really interesting what you're doing because you had to come up with some creative ideas to really showcase the value for what it truly is, and not only with what you did in that competition, but also what you're doing with 9 to 5 Guy, because there's a lot of negative stuff about, where we are, and so I didn't get to see what list that you put together, but I did start following and seeing what you were doing with the 9 to 5 Guy and the people you were bringing on. So I'm just curious to know how you got connected with some of those people and what was, I guess, the criteria to connect with those people for your show.
Well, so I'll go in between like how it went from the blog to the video. So I was writing these blogs and a lot of times like Monday would come around. I'm like, okay, what am I going to write about this week? And then I would knock out the article, I'd write it, find some photos or go take some photos if I had to. And it really like worked out that writing muscle that I hadn't exercised since like maybe college. And even in college, I wasn't that great at it. Right. And so, but I started getting pretty good at that. And then I started getting people from San Antonio and from Brownsville, from Mission, Texas, saying, hey, why don't you come to our city? Why don't you write about the places in our city? And it just wasn't like logical. It just wasn't possible for me to go to San Antonio, eat every burger in the city and tell people what I thought the 5 best ones were. It's just like, it's not possible. And at that time, as social media starts evolving, people say, oh, video is the next thing, right? Video is the next thing. And I was like, well, maybe I'll do video. And then I started kind of reverse engineering it. Okay, I'll do videos. And then, okay, what can you do multiple videos of, like a series of? And I'm like, well, it can't be about me because I'll run out of things to say, And then how can I also grow the audience, right, in other cities? And I said, you know what? I can go and interview people in these other cities. I could go for the weekend, interview someone, come back, edit during the week, and then I can share their audience. Like, I could introduce my audience to them. And then when they share it on Facebook or whatever social media platform, then I'm introduced to their audience, right? The show is. And so that was a strategy of how to grow it. And as far as finding the people for it, before I started, when I came up with the concept, I said, okay, now that I want to do an interview series, right? Mm-hmm. And how can I get people to watch? How can I make mine different? And that's where the tequila came in.
Who doesn't like tequila?
and even if you don't like it, there's some entertainment in that, right? Because you'll be like, oh man, I got to see these people take these shots.
And try to answer questions while they're on the border of
slowly degrading into drunkenness as the interview goes on, right? Yeah. And so, but it's the ultimate icebreaker, man. And it's like I tell people all the time, and I've learned this throughout the process, is like you can have lunch and share a meal with someone, break bread and you connect. Then there's that like next step further where you can have a beer with someone and you connect on a different level. Mm-hmm. And then there's that next step where you're taking shots of tequila and you're crossing that bridge together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
you're like, hey, let's get sorry, Mom. Let's get.
Yeah, we're turning it up, man. This is real now, right?
Yeah.
For real. And so I found that was like the great equalizer, right? And people, and not necessarily because like they get drunk, but like their guard just goes down, because even before the interview, when someone accepts the opportunity to be interviewed and they know that they're going to be taking tequila shots, they already have to trust you enough to say like, okay, I'm about to take some shots on camera with this guy. Yeah. And I'm going to share my story and hope that when it gets edited up and it's the final product's out there, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay. I mean, because it starts off great. I mean, because it is a bond, So that's the conversational marketing is something that we're really focused on right now, and people want to bond, right? And they want to connect emotionally, and taking a shot with somebody is pretty. I don't know. To me, it's like you're sharing something with somebody.
It's ritualistic kind of in the culture in a way.
In a social setting.
Yeah.
So, but how does 9 to 5 come into? I mean, because it's a good brand, but I'm helping.
Yeah. So the name you're talking about, like the name and how that came. So it came up with again my buddy Zar Castillo at Brand Hub. We talking about what the next step was after the Men's Health thing, and he's like, "Why don't you start a blog?" And I said, "Yeah, okay," and I'll write about things and McAllen he said, "Why don't you start a blog, a health and fitness blog?" I said, "No, that's not what I'm about." And he says, well, what are you? Like, what are you? I said, "Look, dude, I'm just a regular guy who works a 9-to-5 job who happens to incorporate fitness into his lifestyle." Yeah. And he was like, 9-to-5 guy, that's got a nice ring to it. And we were on our way back to his office after lunch and searched the URL. All the names were available. And I said, "Okay, cool." And, it's like, I think back and it's like, does it still fit? And it's like, I think that whatever you name your blog or whatever your platform, it becomes whatever you create, the vision you create for it. I mean, I could have named it anything. Yeah. It would have become what it is.
Yeah. That's what we've always said, brand, like whenever people's like, "I want your logo," you just got to make sure that it's whatever you put in, it's like a vessel, right? So whatever you put into it, whatever you invest in it, that's what people are going to recognize it to be.
That's right.
And so, kudos to you, man. Yeah. It's really awesome to see what you've been able to do with that, and also to highlight the Rio Grande Valley in a way that a few people have been able to do before, and you're doing it in a fun and positive way. So that's cool.
I'll tell you what, and to go with like how finding the people. So when I was going to start the idea, or when I was going to shoot the first episode, I said, okay, I had this concern with, am I going to run out of people, right, to interview? And so I said, okay, I have 5 people that are in my circle of friends that I think are interesting stories, and I know that they'll do it, right? So I had the first 5 episodes in my mind already done, and then I said, okay, and then I'll just kind of wing it from there and like try to figure it out. And I remember a friend of mine telling me after the first couple episodes, he was like, "Man, this is a really great concept, and I can envision a time when people are waiting to be interviewed, and you have like a list of people lined up." And I kind of just shrugged it off, saying like, "Oh well, hopefully one day, right?" Yeah. And that's kind of where it's gone, right? I have people lined up, and I just have to wait to like have the time to do it. Yeah. And it's like this network effect, it really is. And so, the more it's like, the more you do, the easier it is to get more people. And those circles of entertainers, actors, and whatever those different industries are, they are all friends and they all communicate with each other. And all it takes is getting a few of those influential ones in their industry for people to realize like, oh, it's cool to be on this guy's show. And the one I can think of right away is El Dusty. I think he was episode 18. And El Dusty is a Latin Grammy nominated DJ out of Corpus Christi. And he's like the pioneer of this like electro cumbia sound, right? And through a mutual friend who had been, was on the show before, I said, "Hey, link me up with Dusty. I'd like to interview him." And so when I interviewed Dusty, Dusty really took a liking to the show, and he said, "Man, this is a really great concept. Anything I can do to help, let me know." And Dusty does these monthly dance parties in Corpus, and so he would bring, and all his friends, his DJ friends, would come down to perform. And so that's how it started. I said, "Hey, you can link me up with so-and-so who's coming down for your show." And so then I would go and interview the person and then get the B-roll footage of the show later that night. And, I think Dusty has maybe connected me with 10 interviews, maybe something like that. And so, most notably Chingo Bling, he had, in conversation, he mentioned, Chingo Bling was in my wedding, Yeah. And Chingo went to my wedding. I was like, "Oh, you're cool with him?" Like, "Yeah, he went to my wedding." And I said, "Well, like, help me out." And
let's get a show together. Yeah.
And so that's how
it's just doing some good things, putting some good stuff out there, getting the right networks. Now with El Dusty, I was out. Like there's downtown. We've hung out before. I think there was one night I did see you. He was with you, right? He's hung out here before the show, and he had been to the I'm sure he's been to the Rio Grande Valley before, right?
Very rarely. I think maybe only one other time before, and it was in his earlier days before the Latin Grammy nominating stuff.
What is it that you see? I mean, I'm sure that there's people who've come down to be part of your show, and then you kind of give them a tour, and you basically advocate, for the Rio Grande Valley. So what is the first thing that they notice or that is surprising to you whenever they visit?
Well, so the way it works is a lot of the times I'll go to the city and interview people, or if they're coming down and they're doing an event down here, they're on tour or whatever, they're doing an event in the city, then I'll capture them while they're here. It's nothing but positive stuff, man. And I think that really people have found out that there's a huge audience here. And a lot of the people who I focus on interviewing are Latino, and of course Rio Grande Valley predominantly Latino, and so people want to reach this market. They want to reach this audience. They don't know how, right? And with 9 to 5 Guy and the 3 Shots, 3 Questions web series, like they found that avenue, right? They know. And I really, it was really the growth of the 9 to 5 Guy really happened when I started doing the videos. And I think that it was because maybe people enjoyed reading the articles. They were entertained. But I think once they saw something, it goes back to conversational marketing. You said, once people could see me on camera, relate to me on whatever level, see, how I acted towards people, and then also see how the guests acted, they connect a lot quicker. And when I started doing the 3 Shots, the audience just grew like exponentially, right? It just right away it grew. And so yeah, I mean, now my audience is a lot in the Valley, but now it's growing a lot of Houston, Corpus, San Antonio. And that's kind of what I tell these people that when I want to interview them, hey, I have an audience in the Rio Grande Valley. I'd love to share your story. Yeah. And they're able to grow their audience base here in the Valley through 9 to 5 Guy and 3 Shots.
Now, whenever you said that there's a waiting list, there's a lot of people who are wanting to be a part of the show. Is there a certain criteria? What do you look for? Actually, what is what do you look for? Yeah. And then ultimately, I guess we can go back and figure out what's the ultimate purpose, for the show.
Yeah, man. So that's like one of the questions that I get a lot is, how do you choose who's on the show, right? Because I get recommendations a lot. Especially after I post an episode, I'll get a lot of messages and people saying, hey, you should interview this person or that person. And man, one of the things when I started the 9 to 5 Guy thing is that I wanted to use, I felt like I had some ideas and I felt that they were good ideas. But I'd never been in a role where I got to make those decisions, right? Well, with the 9 to 5 Guy, I make the decisions. I choose who, I choose when, I choose what colors, I choose what font, and nobody can tell me anything, and it's my project and nobody could ever take it away from me. And so with the 3 Shots interviews, I find someone who's got an interesting story. It doesn't necessarily have to be a musician or a comedian or an entertainer per se. It could be an entrepreneur.
You've had artists, you've had politicians.
I've had Beto Altamirano, an entrepreneur, which was a great interview, and so it's I find people with good stories, right? I just want someone with an interesting story. And it's like this intuition. That's all that's what I could really say. It's like this intuition that I have about this person, that might not be on the level of like a Chingo Bling or a Little Joe, but they've got such a great story to share, and giving them the opportunity to share the story. And then people, now people will watch the episodes even if they don't know the person, and they'll learn about them. Versus before, it was like, okay, do I know this person? Okay, I'll watch it. And it's been great for me. I love meeting people.
It's funny is that I can relate to that, because when we started RGVision, I mean, ultimately that's what we wanted to do, right? It's storytelling. Mm-hmm. We just did it on print. And whenever I meet with people, you're right, there's a gut intuition. It's like, man, I'm really fascinated with, that's why I brought you on the show. It's like, dude, we're really fascinated how you got to where you are today. And everybody has a story. And I see people on a daily basis, like, how did that person get to where they are today? Yeah. And if you get to hear these stories, it's really inspiring, educational, and also informative. And so, man, that's really cool. What was the most, I guess, interesting story that you've had, since starting?
It's so tough, man. Like, because I love them all for different reasons. And I sometimes, like, when people will ask what my favorite interview is, I always say it's the one that I'm working on right now. Mm-hmm. Because when I'm editing and I get into that zone and I'm hearing their story on repeat, and I'm just so into crafting that story to making sure I do it justice that I get so into it that's the one that's my favorite at that moment. And then even when I look back at like the catalog of people, I mean, the one I'm going to release next week is episode 45. Mm-hmm. And I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I interviewed.
There's got to be that one or two that you're like, that one was really good, that you really liked.
Well, so for different reasons, right? The one I just explained right now, El Dusty, because El Dusty really opened his network up to me. Mm-hmm. And then other people like Little Joe, because he's just like a legend and world famous. And I just was so honored to have the opportunity to interview him. Chingo Bling, because he's so like the pop culture relevance of him. But man, it's just like, again, Beto Altamirano, just because, the entrepreneur story.
And his political, aspirations. Mm-hmm. There's got to be that one or two, though, that you're like, man, I think we just had a bromance.
Who is that? Well, the one thing that I will say this about, and it's just a really weird thing. And I don't know if it's the tequila or if it's just like the level of trust that the guest has to have. But whenever I have someone on the show, we become friends. And, I might not always like text them every day or, hey, what are you doing this weekend? It's not like that. But, I'm like, we share our networks. Like, I'm friends with them. Like, I can call that person up and ask for something, or if they're coming in town, hey, let me help promote your event next time you're in town. Yeah. And so that's really the coolest thing about this whole entire experience is these connections that I've made with these people. Yeah. And I have this network of friends throughout the state that I wouldn't have in my regular business job at the McAllen Chamber. Like, it's this other avenue of friends. But it's really opened my creative mind, because they're when you're hearing people tell success stories like over and over again, you realize that none of them are the same, and you see these little things, but you're like, man, the one thing that they keep they do is consistent, is that they just like, they're passionate about their craft. Nothing was on accident. They work hard at it, and when they weren't as popular, or when their music wasn't as well listened to. And so these people share that same common thread, and it's a passion for what they do. Yeah. And
how did so you're saying that, talking about the McAllen Chamber, how did this all tie in, and did it? Yeah, for sure it did, because I needed to figure out, I wanted to create this thing that was my own, but I also needed to make sure that my chamber job came first. Mm-hmm. Right? So what can I do to have this creative project that's my own, that I can work into my regular work schedule, that won't take away from that, right? And so when I started creating content with the blogs, it was creating content about McAllen and generating interest about McAllen, putting these positive stories out there about the city, which was supplementing the marketing efforts of what we were doing, right? And so it helped with that, and then helping me connect with local business owners and things like that. And I never asked anything from any of the business owners. None of those articles were. I wasn't paid to write any of them. It was my genuine, what I thought were the best ones. And so what I was also doing at that same time, and I didn't realize it till later, is that I was positioning the 9 to 5 Guy platform as, this is the go-to source when you want to know the best of the best, the premium, the top this, the best that. And I was positioning myself to be the go-to source for the reliable source. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same way with the interviews, right? People want to know, like, okay,
who's the next hot musician, or who's doing something different, or what's the, are they relevant in pop culture right now? And so they'll watch the interviews because, the selection, and it's pretty neat. It was kind of a byproduct, and I didn't know that was going to happen. Now, aside from creating content, it has really helped me in my business life, because if I call and I need some help with something, or if I need to call in a restaurant or a local business to help me work through a problem, a lot of times they'll recognize me from the show, and they're more willing to say yes, and work with me because of that stuff. So that's
cool, man. Yeah. How you've been able to build a brand equity, with your name, in the community. That's really cool.
Yeah, my boss was a little worried at first, because he's like, oh man, you're taking tequila shots on camera, and so, and so I had these two these boundaries, right? Like, my mom's gonna watch it and my boss is gonna watch it, and if I fall within that spectrum, like, it's okay, right? Yeah. And it's worked out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I have a few more questions, just fun questions. Yeah. I know we were talking earlier. Yeah. What are you watching right now on Netflix? And you did say you like.
You do, yeah. Netflix. I a lot of the times when I'm at home on the weekends, I spend editing, right? But sometimes when I want to give my mind that mental break, I just want to throw on something on Netflix. And I've been really into like post-apocalyptic, like dystopian future sci-fi thrillers. I don't know, man. And then you know how it is when you start watching one or two, then Netflix starts picking up and they're like, hey, since you watch this, you might like this. Yeah. And then I go down this rabbit hole, and I've really uncovered some great things. Some of them I don't even remember the titles, just because I just start watching and I get into it.
Yeah. I can't stand it. I can't stand it, because I'm like, all of a sudden I have all these Jackie Chan film movies that are coming on my trend. I'm like, I don't really like Jackie Chan all that much.
It was one weekend. It was one weekend, man.
Show, man. One weekend. I just like Kung Fu Hustle, and
I've done that too, man. Like, I've done that too, and I start watching these alien documentaries, and it's like one weekend I binge watch on it, and then it just starts feeding me that stuff, and I'm like, look, okay, guys. And then I like watching like stuff about the Third Reich and Hitler and the Nazis, and it's just fascinating to me because it wasn't that long ago, and it's just so apart from reality to me, but it really happened, right? And so I've done that, right, where I binge, and next thing you know, I'm getting fed a documentary of like Nazi, Hitler's alien spacecraft, and it's like combining both of them. I'm like, dude,
you're like, yes, I want to watch that.
And I do, man. And,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to next? Like, what's upcoming, and what are you excited about with the 9 to 5 guy?
Man, currently editing the next episode, and like I said, I have people lined up. Like, I have a little notepad where I write the names, and you can't see it on the you can't see it on the mic on the podcast, but I keep it right in here on my little notepad, and I have my names and I add to them. And some of them I'm just waiting for them because they're McAllen locals, but they're living in New York and they're acting on HBO series and stuff, and I'm just waiting for them to come home to visit family so we can do the interview. And I just, or someone interesting I see, like as I'm watching TV or reading articles or whatever, I'll write that name down. So I'm still continuing to create new episodes. It's super interesting to me because none of them are the same. And that's, I think the beauty of it is that, like, the show's not about me. It's about the people that I'm interviewing. So whatever that person is, the show becomes that, and so it's still very interesting for me. I remember telling my buddies, R and Manny, who helped me with the production of it, I remember telling them, like, episode 18 of Dusty, or even around that time, we were excited, that we get these people of, like, some popularity, right? Yeah. And then they say, and I tell them, guys, we're still in the first inning. Like, wait till we're at episode 50, right? Wait till we're at episode 100. And right now we're at episode 45. And so 50 is not too far around the corner. And so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what that one's going to be. I don't plan them that far ahead. It's like what's available right now, who's available this coming up weekend, and then I do that interview. So I'm just continuing to grow that, man, and just taking on whatever else.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite vacation spot?
Oh man, anywhere with a beach, I just feel like anywhere with a beach and not very good cell phone reception.
Yeah.
We're lucky though that here, living in South Texas, we're about 30 minutes from the best beach in Texas, South Padre Island. That's where we're at.
Yes, but I don't.
But you're not gonna go to South Padre.
Dude, I haven't been to South Padre in like 2 years. I think I've gone for like business stuff, but I haven't gone to like relax on the beach.
Yeah. And plus, if you're gonna take vacation, you want to get away before nobody can see.
Yeah.
Take more than 3 shots.
Yeah, exactly.
And get a little bit more blitz than you normally would.
And that's what it ends up being. Like I go to the island, and it ends up being like just saying hi to everyone, and then all that stuff, and then especially like after the men's health stuff, man, it's a really weird thing. But like I get this like social anxiety when I take off my shirt in public.
Yeah, me too. I get that a lot.
It's really a weird thing. I get this social anxiety thing to me, man, and I just so yeah, I don't really go to the beach at all. But it's a beautiful island, and I should go, and I But yeah,
I think I get more social anxiety because of my lonja. Like, don't judge me, okay? It's my dad fat.
But see, dad bod is okay. Dad bod is okay. Yeah. The problem is that I get more men that come up and approach me than I do women. And it's like guys asking me like, what are my workouts like? I'm like,
you're like, dude, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I want to hang out. Yeah. Well, man, thanks for coming in, dude. Anything you want to plug?
Man, I just, if anyone hasn't watched the show, it's 3 Shots, 3 Questions. It's an interview style web series where tequila is always the answer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beauty of the show. People sometimes ask me also, how do you come up with the questions, right? And I tell them, it's not really about what I ask. It's more about listening, right? And so I'll have like an outline of questions, but when you really listen to someone when they're speaking, and you're really listening to their story, and you really get into it, and I'll print out the questions, and I'll have them in front of me. And if you watch the episode and you see a piece of paper in front of me, like I have no shame, because one, we're taking shots of tequila, so every now and then I need to refocus and remember what my next question was. But number 2, I don't try to memorize the questions so that I can really intently listen.
Yeah.
And then if I hear something in that story, it's picking up on that and saying, hey, tell me that story.
Yeah, because it can go into a totally different, in a different direction.
Yeah.
And you can lose out on a lot of good content if you try to stick to what you thought was actually a good question.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I do that like with Little Joe, for example, and he just, he's talking to me, telling me a story, and then he just mentions Cesar Chavez. And he just kind of mentions it as a matter of fact type of thing. And I said, and so then I'll say, tell me the story of the first time you met Cesar Chavez. And then he'll go into that whole story, and it becomes its own thing. And I'm able to create an Instagram video off of that one answer. And so I'm able to create different pieces of content and allowing them to just go off and tell that story. And so really, listening is like the most important thing on that show. And I just like to listen to people's stories and have a genuine curiosity about people. Cool. So if I wanted to plug anything, it's, if you haven't watched 3 Shots, 3 Questions, you can find it on Facebook. So it's on the 9 to 5 Guy platform, which is at 9 to 5 Guy. So it's all spelled out, NINETOFIVEGUY. Same on Instagram. And just tune in and play along while you're watching. Drink some shots while you're watching the show. It's fine.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in, Bob.
Yeah, man.
We'll see you, man.